Welcome to the Dynasty Dugout Show, a podcast covering all things minor league baseball. Get a front row seat to the action with everything you need to know about the future stars of Major League Baseball. And now, here's your host, Chris Clegg.
Welcome into the Dynasty Dugout Show. Today, we are talking all things Boston Red Sox prospects. And to do so, I brought in the expert, who is my friend and kind of partner on Sox Prospects. He is the director of scouting at SoxProspects.com. You probably know him. His name is Ian Cundall. Definitely love connecting with Ian when he's down here at Greenville, even spring training. Ian is all things scouting with the Red Sox. I figured who better to bring in to talk about the Red Sox farm system. So welcome, Ian. How are you doing?
Well, that was a very nice introduction. I'm not sure I can top that. Ever probably on another show, but yeah, thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure. Just love talking shop. This is the fun part. It's a grind. I'll put all those miles in and going to all the games, which is also fun. But I think the off season, it's about just talking it up, and it's a very interesting team and farm system to cover and talk about, because I think right now, especially, there's a lot going on with them that is relevant for both 2025 and then going forward. They're kind of a lot of interesting and players with different outlooks in play.
Yeah, and even despite the trade for Garrett Crochet, we saw a decent chunk of the farm go out with Braden Montgomery, Chase Mydroth, and the pitcher, as I'm sitting here, Wikelman Gonzalez. I've seen him a ton. I don't know why I was playing his name. But this farm is still incredibly deep and still very talented. And they've just added more talent to that. The international signing period began 2 days ago as we're speaking, and they just added some more good talent, in my opinion. And I think they're going to be still in pretty good shape for the long term, even despite the Crochet trade. They can make another trade and still be really good. So yeah. I think it's in a real good spot right now.
Yeah, you're definitely in a good spot if you can acquire Garrett Crochet and still say you have assets to acquire a better player than him. And I think it is interesting, though, when you look at the farm heading into the trade deadline. Even last year, they traded about, I think, 6 prospects at that time, including Nick York, who's probably a borderline top 100 guy. Ryan Zefferjohn came up, made an immediate impact with the Angels. Matthew Lugo has a chance this year maybe to break through into the majors. A couple guys with the Blue Jays too. So yeah, it was and I think actually Nico Cavadas did make the major. So yeah, between the deadline and this offseason, there's a lot of outgoing prospects, but there's an influx of talent too, with, as you said, the July 2, geez, showing my age there. The January 15th signing class, and also some small fun trades that Craig Breslow has been making over the course of the offseason with the 40-man roster management.
Yep. That's quite fun. We'll start at the top, and I think everybody knows Roman Anthony and Kristian Campbell, obviously 2 stud talents. I mean, I think 2 top 10 prospects for most anybody, if not, top 5. And, most outlets have Roman Anthony at 1 this point, but let's talk their outlook for 2025. Yeah, I think we know long-term what the talent could be, but when do you think they'll be in Boston? What are the chances they make the opening day roster, and how do they impact this team in 2025?
I think both of them are going to be given a chance to impress in camp. I expect them to get a lot of playing time, because why not? I mean, we've seen the impact that players their age or even younger have had in their debut seasons. I mean, look no farther than last season with the Jacksons. Obviously, Paul Skeens is a pitcher, so different animal. But I think Jackson, Maryland, Jackson, Churio are kind of the 2 you can look at who have similar. They were seen probably similar prospect wise. Top 5 in the game. I'd probably take those 2 over them. Kind of where they were entering last season, but both of them, came in and had really big impacts on teams that were both playoff teams. So I think Anthony and Campbell will be given every shot. I think the pathway as of now, and this is all subject to change if the Red Sox go out and make some sort of Nolan Arenado trade or sign an Alex Bregman. But as of now, I think there's a clear pathway for Kristian Campbell, more so than Roman Anthony, to make the team out of camp. As of now, the second base job looks like it's Campbell or Vaughn Grissom. And Vaughn Grissom is definitely a divisive player. But if Kristian Campbell is anything close to advertised, I don't think he's the type of player that's going to stop Kristian Campbell from being on the opening day roster, if that makes sense. Kristian Campbell last year, just an incredible season. We heard the whispers. You were there. I remember you were there when we started hearing hey, you might want to check out this Campbell guy, because coming into that. I mean, he was a fourth round pick who signed for what, 300K. He's on the radar, but he's not a guy you're keying in on. And it was pretty. You knew pretty quickly. It was like, oh man, they have a player here. But I don't think even I or you thought he was going to be this type of, someone who in the offseason would be pushing a top 5, top 3 national ranking. Yeah. But he does everything well, and I think his skill set just fits so well with what the Red Sox need. They have a lineup that is very left-handed and has a lot of guys with a lot of swing and miss. And the two things Campbell brings there, he's a righty who hits lefties well. He had a 9, almost 1,000 OPS against lefties last season. It was like 992 or something. And he makes a ton of contact, high zone contact rate. He sees a lot of pitches, doesn't chase, hits the ball extremely hard. It's the skill set that the Red Sox need in their lineup. So I think the pathway is there for him to potentially make the opening day roster. With Roman Anthony, it's a little murkier just because they have so many outfielders already. You look at the projected roster right now, because they are committed, it seems for now, to playing Ceddanne Rafaela as the opening day center fielder. So that pushes Jarren Duran to left, and then you have Wilyer Abreu in right. And if Anthony was right-handed, maybe you could say, hey, Wilyer Abreu has never really hit lefties in his career. He's not that he's been given the chance much, but maybe he can come in, be a platoon partner there, at least to start, with the eye towards taking a full-time job. But they have Rob Snyder to do that. They have a couple other guys on their bench projected right now who can play outfield. So it's hard to find everyday at-bats for him unless they're willing to basically make Ceddanne Rafaela a super utility player, which I don't think they are at this point. So with Anthony, I think he'll be up next season, no doubt. I think it might just take into, maybe you're looking at June, July. Obviously injuries can change this, but I think probably June, July. And the hope is, he forces the issue. And then when that does happen, either, maybe something happened with Masataka Yoshida at that point. Maybe you do decide, hey, Rafaela, like, we think you can bring a ton of value in that super utility role. We'll push Jarren Duran to center and play Anthony in left. Something like that. So I think the Campbell is probably a little ahead of Anthony in terms of chance to debut, but I think long term, I think Anthony has more of a chance to be the impact, superstar type player.
Yeah, that's kind of my read on the situation as well, just given the opportunities. And, I mean, it wouldn't shock me if Campbell's on the opening day roster. It wouldn't shock me if he's a late May call up either way.
Exactly.
I think Campbell does get up earlier, though. I think we both agree with that. But both can be good impacts this year. Both have special kind of talent. But let's go to the big three. Now it's back to the big three after we saw a couple of them traded out. But Marcelo Mayer, he ended his season hurt. He's been rehabbing, seeing he's back swinging. Everything looks good from what I've seen. Is he fully healthy, and what are our expectations for him look like in 2025?
Yeah, he should be full go come spring training. I know that he's been working out normally, had a kind of a normal off season. Obviously, after his season ended, I think around August, after mid-August, or excuse me, end of July. He didn't play after that. I think that he's a little further behind, as you said, just largely he just doesn't have as much experience. You look at his seasonal at bats. I think his career high in at bats in the system is around just over 300, maybe around 350. He's just never played a full season. And we saw it last year. He got that promotion to Worcester, but he never played in a game. Whereas Campbell and Anthony got that month plus of game time, which I think is invaluable. The AAA pitching is just a completely different animal than AA these days. You see a lot more crafty pitchers, better feel for secondaries, better strike throwing ability. And it's also a good chance, and it's a good test when you have to adjust to the new to the challenge system. So, umpires are better. Everything's called a little tighter. So I think just not getting that experience is going to set him back. I think that there's still a chance, we could see him in 2025, but I also wouldn't be surprised, frankly, if he ended up spending the majority of the season in AAA with the eye towards maybe, he's Rule 5 eligible this coming off season, which obviously is going to be protected. So maybe, there's no harm if he's shows in August or September, he's ready. Why not? If there's a spot, give him a chance. But I don't think it's out of the question that he spends the entire season in AAA. I think it's just going to be largely dependent on what happens with the Red Sox middle infield. Because if you put Campbell at second base, that means that Mayer's going to have to be playing short or third. And he's going to be exposed to third. They've already said it. They've come out publicly and said he's going to be moving around the infield in Worcester, which makes a ton of sense. They started doing it last year when Trevor Story was rehabbing. And it's something they do. It's kind of a finishing school task with their prospects. When they think you're getting close to the majors, they're going to expose you to different positions so that you're ready in case that is what you have to do when you get there. And with Trevor Story locked in at shortstop for now, and Rafael Devers at third base, the same thing. It is a little interesting to see how they fit Mayer in, and that's why I think it's more of like something you could, barring injury, and that's the great wild card here because neither Devers or Story, especially, are guys you would say are the healthiest individuals when it comes to playing or staying on the field. But Mayer obviously falls in that same boat. But I think that they'll expose him to a few positions, and if they want to make a move to get him in there as an everyday player, it's just easier to do that, I think, in the offseason.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I wouldn't be shocked if Mayer doesn't get up at all. Maybe it's a cup of coffee and remember in hopes you have him on the opening day roster in 2026. But
exactly,
I think the biggest thing for him is just a full season of health. Like
he needs at bats. That's the biggest thing. Is he needs if you look at his total number of at-bats compared to guys from a similar draft class, he's just way under them because his career high in games is around like 80, 90 games. He's missing 40 to 50 a season. Yeah. And you add that up over the course of 3 years, like that's basically a full season's worth of games he's missed. So I agree. He just needs that exposure. He needs to go out there every day, see, good secondary stuff, face lefties, because he's had his struggles versus lefties. He's had his struggles versus secondary stuff. Unlike, I think when you look at Anthony and Campbell, especially with their offensive profiles, it's a lot easier it's a lot more difficult to kind of pick holes in their game. Whereas Mayer does have some pretty obvious areas for improvement. Just looking at the data, especially, he's a lot more aggressive. He, as I said, really struggles for secondary pitches. He struggles versus lefties, like pretty big platoon splits. Both Anthony and Campbell are platoon neutral, more or less. In fact, like Anthony was better against lefties than righties last year if you go by OPS. Meyer has like a 200 plus point split versus left to right. So I think there's definitely areas that he can work on, and where a full season in AAA would be frankly, I think, good fine for his development in order to kind of get that exposure and necessary reps.
Yeah. 100% agree with you. Let's talk the top arm in the system. Luis Perales took off last year. He took some major steps forward. Unfortunately, he got to AA and went down with Tommy John. I think this answer
I was there. It was bad.
You and Jeff Ponce were both there, weren't you?
We were, yeah. It was in a stretch where I was at 3 straight games where pitchers got left and got injured. 2 of them for the season. Him, because Angel Bastardo was the next start, or either the start before or the start after that I was at. So it was a rough stretch for me health-wise there.
Yeah, not ideal, but
no.
Your answer might be short to this. I've gotten asked several times, and I would venture to say no. He had his TJ the end of June last year. Do you think we see him pitch in affiliated ball at all this season?
Probably not. I think they're going to be overly cautious here. And I kind of think that when you look at the way the schedule lines up, best case, he's back in late August, early September. And at that point, is it worth, trying to get, maybe it is worth getting on the mound for a game or two, just get a couple innings just to feel, get that rush again. But I also could see if there's any sort of setback, you're pushing it to 2026 and they're not going to rush it. Like, this is the type of talent he is and the potential he showed on the mound last season. This is not a player that you want to rush back. You're going to take your time here because he has by far the highest upside as a pitcher in the system. He's probably, if he was healthy, I think he's probably a top 25 prospect nationally this offseason, top 50 at worst with the stuff he showed. Yeah. And you don't want to take any chances here. He's not the biggest guy. He's probably 6'1", 180-ish, I would guess. Good athlete, but it's not, that workhorse frame that you're not worried about, he'll come back, this is a guy you want to be very careful with. He's got electric stuff. And I think that maybe at best you're looking at, a handful of 1-inning appearances to end the season. But I think more likely we'll probably see him in 2026 starting up again with AA Portland.
Yeah. And I think that the perceived value on Perales might drop throughout the year, just given, out of sight, out of mind. But the talent is still there. Like, I would still 100% bet on Perales coming back. And even if he's 95% of himself, 90% of himself, that's a extremely talented arm. He showed some very impressive things this year when I got to see him. The pitch data is absurd with Perales. So certainly somebody they definitely want to make sure they get back healthy.
Definitely. You've seen with pitchers, it can take time. I think Andrew Painter is a great example with Philadelphia. He missed all of last season, and he's still highly regarded. Pitchers get hurt. It's the name of the game these days, and I think it's their stock shouldn't change in your eyes that much because of an injury anymore. That's kind of just how I look at it. Shoulders are a little different, but Tommy John, for me, you almost it's kind of sad you have to say it, but you almost expect it at this point with every pitcher. So I think with Perales, it's just he's in a holding pattern right now, but if he gets back on the mound and shows anywhere close to the stuff he has, he's going to have a massive up arrow and just rocket up the rankings, I think, starting, probably in 2025 or excuse me, 2026.
Right. Yeah. Special arm talent. Potential special talent is Yoeilin Cespedes. We saw him in spring training last year, and he was impressive. We saw his BP first, I think, and it was just like, this kid's he's jacked. Like his forearms and biceps. Like
he does not look like a 17-year-old or 18-year-old like he was last year.
Saw some live BP with him too. He's facing Richard Fitz, and did he face Chris Martin as well? I can't remember if he faced.
It was Fitz and someone else. I can't remember who the other pitcher, but he held his own against both of them.
Yeah, he looked good, and so he went to the complex. He dominated, got promoted to Salem, and ultimately broke his hamate and didn't play. So unfortunately, his season ended early. But I think that Cespedes was trending on a route where he could potentially be a top 5 prospect in the system, which with some graduations might be even higher. Do you see that kind of trajectory with him where the talent level's there? Obviously, the glove's a bit of a question. Does he have to go to second base? Where does he play? But the bat's pretty good. So do you see that kind of trajectory on Cespedes?
Yeah, I definitely think there's a chance that he comes back. And it's for me, it's going to be largely driven by his value at the plate, because talking to scouts who saw him last year, we didn't get to see him in the field because he wasn't he was coming off some sort of injury in spring training, so he wasn't playing the field. But talking to scouts who did see him in the FCL, they were not he's not a shortstop is what I'll say. He's probably a second baseman. He might be a left fielder, but if the bat reaches its potential, it's not going to matter. It's electric bat speed. To the point where I think it does kind of get him in trouble a little bit, because his hands are so quick and his bat is so electric that he's very aggressive right now. The approach is still a major work in progress, but when he makes contact, he hits the ball extremely hard. His EVs for his age are insane. He just anything in the zone he's going to hit, but he also likes to chase those pitches out of the zone. So, that's an area that there's still plenty of time to develop that. But I think that if he comes out healthy this year in Salem and has a good offensive year, yeah, definitely can push to the top 5, because he's got that combination of bat speed and ability to impact the ball that you just don't see that often in guys his age. And if he does that, like we think he can, then you're going to be able to look past that he might only be, like a 45 at second base or a 40 at second base. You can make it work if the bat lives up to its potential.
100%. Yeah. And Franklin Arias, similar trajectory. I'd say he obviously did play in single A and put up some.
He had a really good season. Arias, they get to it very different ways. I think Cespedes is a lot louder with his tools. Arias is just a very solid contributor across the board, but I think there's definite upside there too. I wouldn't be surprised at all if he started the season in Greenville. Frankly, I think that he's kind of got that profile where he could handle an aggressive assignment like that, and he's the same age. Actually, I think he's younger than Cespedes, and he showed a little bit of a kind of a more advanced approach. It's not as loud at the plate, but he's another one I think could easily be, especially with the impending graduations at the top of the Red Sox system. He's someone who I would not be surprised at all if they're in play to be, a top 3 prospect in the offseason. Yeah. Next offseason, I mean.
Yeah, 100%. I think the talent's there. I think if he bulks up a little bit,
the biggest. Yeah, the biggest issue with both of them is that they're just not that projectable. Cespedes is probably 5'8", 5'9", jacked, but he's extremely jacked.
Bowling ball, yeah.
Yeah, and whereas Arias is a little leaner, but he's 5'10", 5'11" at most. So these aren't the guys, when you look on the diamond and you see a 6'2", 6'3" guy in the middle of the field. These are a little smaller, but they're both really compact, and they have tools that play above kind of their size, and so they're really exciting guys to have in the system.
Yeah. Another exciting arm who I think has as deep and as talented of arsenal is honestly Perales is David Sandlin, who has a 5-pitch mix. It's really good stuff. It's an electric fastball. He's struggled to stay on the mound health-wise. I saw he was at the performance camp that they put on. Part of me wonders if he could go to the bullpen and be fast-tracked to Boston, because the stuff would be electric out of the bullpen, but also he's got a starter's frame. I mean, he's 6'4", broad shoulders, jacked. And honestly, he might even be bigger than 6'4". I saw the picture with all those guys, and he would look like significantly taller than Anthony and Campbell, who are 6'3".
Yeah.
So Sandlin is interesting. I think that the upside's there to be a starter and a solid starter at that, but he could be an electric bullpen option too. So I'm curious what you see there and your thoughts on what the org does with him long term.
I think he's the type of, he's got that profile that you give him every chance to start. And it was interesting. We had Justin Willard, who's the Red Sox director of pitching, on our podcast recently, on the Sox Prospects podcast. And we talked about Sandlin with him because Sandlin had a weird year in the sense that if you look at like his strikeout to walk numbers, all really, really impressive. The raw stuff is off the charts. Like, as you said, fastball runs up into the high 90s. He's got 2 breaking balls and a splitter that are all nasty. And 3 breaking balls and a splitter. Just a lot of variety with his pitches. But he also gave up 14 home runs in like 60 innings last year. And Willard had a really interesting take on that, just basically being like the batted ball results might not have been as like repeatable as you think. So, which was interesting when you think about it, because there can be some luck. If you throw a bad pitch, it's not going to be a home run 10 out of 10 times.
Right.
So if he can tighten up that command, things like that, and maybe last season is the point. Every bad pitch, every mistake he was made, he was being punished. That doesn't happen, and like that's going to level out over bigger samples. And so, I think that he's a player who could have is prime for a really big year. I've heard he's had a really good offseason. You look at his size, you look at this raw stuff. He's been up to 100 miles an hour. Multiple missing secondaries. It's all there for being a starter. It's just got to find that consistency, stay healthy, and then improve that command and control. But I think he checks a lot of boxes, and he's someone who I think with a good season could definitely push their way into the major league equation for late in the season, because I wouldn't be surprised at all if, he started the majority of the year and then to kind of tail off his innings at the end, they brought him up in a bullpen role, because he's another one who's Rule 5 eligible heading into next season. So if you're going to have to have him in the offseason, if he's pitching well in August, why not give him a shot in the bullpen? Guy who's throwing 100 with, 2 bat missing secondaries. So I really like Sandlin. I think that you give him every chance to start, and if that doesn't work out, you got a nice fallback plan with the bullpen there.
Yeah, I set on quite a few of his starts, and some of the home runs, like he allowed a home run to Mar Johnson, and Greenville can be hitter friendly.
Yeah.
But he grooved like a 99 mile an hour fastball, and Johnson barely got wood on it, went oppo over the green monster, like barely got over. Next at bat, though, he ate him up with the splitter and sweeper. Like, it just made him look silly. So, yeah. I would have to go back and look, but I think maybe fastball location. But again, like you look at some of the, like, you're not going to allow home runs that often if you're grooving 98, 90, 99, even if it's like, missed on location.
Yeah. Well, that was when I saw him. He had a start where I think he gave up 3 or 4 home runs.
Now Taxes is 100% free when you file in the TurboTax app if you didn't file with us last year.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Just do your own taxes in the app by 2/18.
What if I have lots of forms?
All good. All 100% free.
What if I had 3 jobs?
Still 100% free.
What if I once saw Bigfoot?
That has nothing to do with taxes, so still 100% free.
Now that's what I'm talking about.
Now this is Taxes. See if you qualify in the TurboTax app. Excludes TurboTax Live. Must start and file in app by 2/18.
And it was all just hanging sweepers. And it was just like he would throw a couple good ones, and then he would just hang one. It just got punished every single time. He gave up like 6 hits, I think, in 6 innings or 5 innings. It was something along those lines. It was basically every hit was a missile, but he also had 20 swinging strikes in the outing and struck out like 8. So it was like, you can see the potential there. And it's just, hey, if you make one bad pitch, you're not going to be punished every time like he seemingly was last season.
Yeah, for sure. Go to a very different arm, and that was their draft pick last year, Payton Tolle of TCU. Big lefty, probably he may have some of the like highest extension of any pitcher in minor leagues, like 7'3", 7'4", something wild.
Yeah, it's elite extension.
He sits low 90s, but it plays up so much more. But Tolle is pretty interesting. I think there's some arsenal tweaks going on there from what he was doing at TCU, and I think he could be one that really pops off this year. So can you tell us a little bit more about Payton Tolle and the outlook there for 2025?
Tolle's a really interesting pitcher because there are not a lot of guys who are 6'6", 250 with, as you said, he's over, I think it's 7.4 feet of extension. So he's basically throwing the ball like halfway to the plate. He is low 90s, as you said. He's up to like 96. But I think the thing that I'm most interested to see is what they do with his secondary stuff. In college, it was kind of like a sweepy slider in the around 80 and then a changeup, but he didn't really throw it very much. And so I think that's the area that there's just a lot to work with. We don't know what his arsenal is going to look like coming into the season because he's never pitched in an official game for the Red Sox. So I think it's going to be radically different than what we're looking at now.
Yep.
I think that that's something they've been working on. I believe he's already down to 4 Myers, so he's high on the priority list to see. But just pitchers with outlier characteristics like that type of extension just really interests me. It's a really funky delivery given his size and the extension. It's a really tough look for hitters. And if you got a low 90s fastball that plays up, where I think there's a chance for more velo too with his frame, and then they optimize the secondary pitches, which I give the Red Sox a ton of credit. I think their pitching development has taken a massive leap over the last couple of years, and especially last season. The number of pitchers who made extreme jumps is really, really impressive. Talks about Perales. Connolly early is another one who I think he was on our list to talk about, but I thought by the end of the season, I was really impressed with the improvements he made. Hunter Dobbins is another one. And I think Tolle just falls in that camp where he checks all the boxes for what the Red Sox are looking for in a pitching prospect. And now that they got him in their pitching lab, they can really optimize his stuff in order to turn him into the best possible pitcher in the future in the major leagues, which is ultimately the goal. Might it take a little time to kind of get there? Of course. But at the end of the day, the goal is to turn these guys into major league quality pitchers because that's what the players want and it's what the teams want. And, the way they get there, it's going to be different. It's individualized for each player, but I think that he's got all the tools necessary to kind of check those boxes, and eventually reach that potential of being, a quality major league arm.
Yeah, I'll be very curious to see him this spring, and then who knows? Maybe he gets sent to Greenville out the gate. He could, just given college arm. Maybe
definitely. Yeah, you. I was looking at the rosters yesterday. The Greenville roster has a chance to be pretty interesting to start the season. The two guys we just talked about, Miguel Blaze, there's a lot of guys like that who could be there.
Yeah, it'll be fun for sure. So Tolle's really fascinating to me, but so is this guy, Conrad Cason, who they took in the 8th round last year, big overslot deal, two-way player, incredible athlete, great on the mound. They're committed to develop him as a two-way, which I think is interesting. Do you think that lasts, and what are we looking at with him?
Yeah, it's a really interesting situation because they haven't really developed a guy as a two-way player. They had Casey Kelly, who was a first-round pick a long time ago. I'm gonna guess a lot of people listening don't even know who that is, but he was their first-round pick, and I want to say 2013 maybe. No, because it was probably maybe a little earlier than that even. But they basically he hit his first summer, and then they turned him into an only pitcher after that because they wanted him to be a pitcher, and I think. Ultimately, with Cason, he probably is going to end up on the mound. But with two-way players, you got to have buy-in from the player. And if the player wants to be a two-way player, and that was part of why you signed him, was you guaranteed him that he could do that, you have to give him the chance to. So I think that out of the gate, he's going to get that chance this season. We'll see how it goes. I think ultimately he is going to end up on the mound because it's just when you got a guy up to 100 as an 18-year-old who's an uber athlete, you got to give that guy a look on the mound. So I think that that's ultimately where his home will be. But it's exciting. They don't have there's not a lot of pitchers with his type of athleticism, and he really is an outlier. With when you look at the Red Sox history of drafting pitchers last season, basically everyone they took a bunch, I think 14 pitchers. Basically every pitcher they took was 6'3" or bigger. Most of them were 6'5" or bigger, big guys. Big fastball. Cason's not that. He's, 6'1", 180. Just shows you how much they valued him. So I'm very excited to see him this year, and I think it'll be it's always fun having to write 2 separate reports for the same player. Yeah. But I think that he's another one who has the Red Sox system, though it might be down because of these trades, it has a ton of upside, and there's so many guys who could pop for very different reasons, and Cason's just another one on that list.
Yeah. Well, speaking of prospects popping, I know it's early. We're sitting here talking on January 17th. We will definitely know more once camp starts. We got the Kristian Campbell intel at camp last year in mid-years. But as of right now, who is a prospect you think could really take a step forward or jumps up the Red Sox list, the most in 2025?
Ooh, it's a good question. I think one name to keep an eye on is someone who ended the season with you, Nelly Taylor. He was an 11th round pick in 2023 out of I believe a junior college in Florida, and his surface numbers aren't great from Salem. He had 228, 336, 358 with 60 walks, 106 strikeouts. But if you look at some of the more, under the surface data, like good approach, doesn't really chase, and he hits the ball extremely hard. And that's what really stood out to me. He's a guy who's pushing almost a 40%, 90th percentile exit velocities at 38.4 last year. Or excuse me, his hard hit rate was 38.4. His 90th percentile exit velocity was 105.4 last year. It's a really good number for a 21-year-old who was seen as kind of a raw, more athletic type with maybe not a lot of impact. Like, he showed a lot more ability to impact the baseball than I expected last season. And I think just with more reps, he's a guy who hasn't had a lot of playing time as in the past. He he was in junior college, so it wasn't like he was at D1. I think he was committed to Florida State, but he adjusted really well to pro ball, I thought. And if he can carry over those improvements and continue to get better with that batted ball profile, he could be a really interesting prospect this season.
Yeah, Nelly would be my breakout pick as well. He was a fun look. I only had him for 2 weeks, but
yeah, he was great with Greenville. Like, I was very impressed with the way he adjusted to the level, because that's a pretty big step up. By the end of the season, Salem pitching, or excuse me, low A pitching is bad. So it's understandable if guys are going to kind of rake there, but then to go up to Greenville and carry it on was very impressive.
Yeah, he hit a homer in Greenville that was like 109. I need to find the exact numbers, but it was like 109 and like 420 or something stupid like that. Like, he absolutely smoked it. It was.
His EV numbers, like, you look at his 90th percentile exit velocity compared to, like, here than some of the names that he was ahead of. Alan Castro, like Josh Nixon Garcia, Kyle Teal, Emmanuel Valdez, Blaze Jordan. Like, he's up there with the guys like the Mayer, Campbell. He's just under those guys. He's right near Tristan Casas last year's 90th percentile, or excuse me, 90th percentile EV. So, like, this is a 21-year-old who doesn't exactly look like he's jacked. He's super athletic, but he has room to fill out, I think, more in his frame. So I'm really interested to see what he can do this season.
Yeah, and he runs well. Contact. He doesn't really expand the zone all that much. Like, the contact rates are like average for Aiden.
Yeah, zone is below average. It's like 77%, I think. But
pick up a little bit. But
yeah,
he ran like a 25% chase rate. Maybe I'm wrong.
No, 21%.
Yeah,
so low chase rate. Yeah, like chase rate was good. Saw over 4 pitches per plate appearance. Like, the approach metrics are good. If he can just tighten that up in the zone, make more contact consistently in the zone, there's power there, definitely.
Yeah. Big Nelly Taylor fan. I'm curious to watch 2 of the arms in Juan Valera, how he progresses, and Dalvinson Reyes coming out the DSL. Mm-hmm. Both those arms are quite fascinating to me. So I guess either of those guys taking leaps now with Reyes being stateside and Valera already getting some single A experience. I'm really fascinated to see what they do this year. But that leads us into the final segment. And I kind of mentioned at the top of the show, but the Red Sox added some good international talent that have already signed. The international period began on January 15th, 2 days ago as we were recording this, and they've already locked up some really fun players. So you look at the dollar values. I think people get so caught up in the dollar values of international signings, and you won't find any of the Red Sox guys at the top of list. But I think you got to put a big asterisk by that, just given how the international signing period works and how guys agree to deals so much earlier. Things change. Several of the Red Sox signees have changed for the better over the last year or two. They've got a really fun class. Dorian Soto, a shortstop. Harold Rivas, he's a toolsy outfielder. Hector Ramos, infielder. We got some fun arms as well. You want to briefly hit on any of those guys before we get out of here?
Yeah, I think it's a really exciting class. I think it's there's a lot of upside here, and they have I like that they have a kind of a diverse profile of players. You have Soto, who I think is kind of more that offense first, potential for hit and power, like above average with both. He's 6'2", 190 right now, switch hitter, but super projectable swing and strength, good bat speed. He's going to be given every chance to play shortstop. He's probably going to have to move off the position eventually, given that he's already 6'2", 190 as a 16-year-old. Like, he's probably going to outgrow it, but there's offensive upside for days here. He's already putting up big EVs, just great work ethic too. Like, he just checks all the boxes you look for in that prototypical, high upside offensive profile in the international market. And then some of but the flip side of that, I think, is someone like Harold Rivas. Rivas, it's the defense. The defense is potentially like Gold Glove caliber in the future. You're hearing, sixes and sevens thrown on the arm in the defense already. That's, really high praise. This is a guy who's a no doubt center fielder. And he also, though, and he's a little smaller. He's like 6 foot, 170, but he's already putting up, pretty good EVs. We'll see where the power goes. We'll see where the hit tool goes. That's going to decide the future there. But this is a guy, top of the scale defensive profile. And that's just such a nice base to be able to build on. So he's a really exciting guy. Ramos is another one, another switch hitter, good athlete. Not as much impact potential, I think, as Soto, but I think the hit tool could be pretty good there. And another guy who's, solid defender, can run a little bit, good athlete. So yeah, they got a lot of high end up the middle talent, I think. And then obviously one guy you didn't mention, the pitcher, Sadbiel, Delzine.
Yeah.
He's a monster just physically. He's listed at like 6'5", 190. I think he's closer to 6'4", 220 is what I've heard. And there's videos of him pitching, and he looks like a professional throwing against like kindergartners. It's insane. And his raw stuff, he's up to 94 already. Good secondaries. He's got a pretty good changeup and breaking ball already. Talking to some people who've seen him, you get kind of a range of outcomes with which secondary pitch they like better, which I feel like you don't get very often with guys in the IFA market. Usually they're 2-pitch guys when they sign, and it's, hey, we can develop a third pitch. He's got 2 legit secondaries already, and he's a 4-pitch guy. So I think he's a really exciting arm too. And I think it shows that, they're not a team that spends a lot of money on pitchers in the international market. So the fact that they were willing to shell out $500K for someone like him shows how highly they regard him.
Yeah. And $500K for a pitcher,
that's a ton.
Is a lot. Like,
yeah.
Teams aren't willing to do that. So
no,
that shows you the talent level for sure. So the system is got a new influx of talent. Excited about those guys, but I think that's going to wrap us up. Thank you for joining us, Ian. If you want to plug anything you've got going on, the site, anything on social, you can gladly do that now.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Always great talking shop. You can check out, if you're interested in getting more in-depth info on these guys, check out SoxProspects.com. We got scouting reports there, video, all that fun stuff on pretty much everyone in the system. So if you ever have questions, you can go there. And if you want to hear more in-depth discussion of just the Red Sox and kind of, we'll occasionally hit on some other things, but mostly Red Sox related, check out the Sox Prospects podcast. You can find that on all your major audio platforms. And you can follow me on Twitter/X at Ian Cundall if you're interested in basically Red Sox stuff, and occasionally I'll throw up some soccer related tweets, but that's about it. Yeah, Michigan too. Yeah, definitely.
Yep. Sox Prospects is the number one source for anything Red Sox prospects. I don't think there's a better outlet out there. Happy to assist and help out any way I can on the site. So I am very fortunate to help them out with some Greenville coverage. So
we'll really appreciate your help, because you do a great job, and excited for another year. It's going to be a really fun year, I think.
Greenville's going to have a lot of talent, but that'll do it. This has been another edition of the Dynasty Dugout Show. We will see you next time.